Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mass Retirees Weekly Update. Today's Friday, July 11th. I'm Sean Duhamel. Thank you so much for joining with us and tuning in again this week. Now you may know we took a brief hiatus from our weekly updates last week for the 4th of July holiday. I hope all of you had a wonderful 4th and a great weekend. I know I did. It was very relaxing. Got a few things done around the house, kind of recharged the batteries, but we're right back to it. We were also busy over the 4th of July itself. Governor Healey actually signed the FY26 State Budget on the morning of July 4th. I'm happy to report that the budget does include the 3% COLA for state and teacher retirees, as well as fully funds the pension appropriation. There are no surprises, no changes with any of that. The fact that the budget was signed at the beginning of the month and passed by the legislature on time, the governor signed it very quickly. All of this means that state and teacher retirees will receive your COLA in your July pension check. Years ago, when the budget was delayed, and in a couple of cases actually delayed until August, those pension payments, while retroactive to July 1st, were not paid until until the August pension check. Again, that's not the case this year. So all of the 102 local retirement systems, as well as the state and teacher systems, will be paying the COLA in the July check for FY26, and this is great news. Now, for the state and teacher COLA, it is once again based on a $13,000 base. That's not a surprise. As you should know by now, the COLA base, the creation of a new senior or enhanced COLA, all of these issues are being looked at and studied, actively studied by the Special COLA Commission that's been up and running since the 1st of this year. The COLA Commission's meeting again at the end of this month. Right now, we believe most likely we're going to see a finalization of the Commission's work early in the fall. That will include most likely a report as well as recommendations on improving the COLA base for state and teacher retirees, as well as the creation of the new enhanced or senior COLA. Now, we've reported a lot on these issues in recent weeks and months. The July edition of our newsletter, The Voice, the #1 story on the front page is about the COLA Commission and kind of laying out our vision of what we're hoping to accomplish through the work of the Commission. So if you haven't already done so, please take a look at our July newsletter, again, right on the front cover. We've also, within our weekly updates, there's several videos and emails that we've sent out to all of you detailing exactly what we're hoping to accomplish through the work of the Commission. We'll be further updating everybody once we have more details to report, perhaps late this month, early next month, and certainly once we get into September, October, when the Commission wraps up its work. But we believe things are heading in the right direction. We're encouraged by the work that's been done so far, and we're very hopeful that this will enable us to have a plan presented to the legislature, a proposal presented to the legislature later this year that we can advocate for to get adopted for FY27, which is the fiscal year that would start almost exactly a year from now. So that's what we're focused on in terms of the COLA over the long term. But in the meantime, we still have several bills that we filed this year that are now pending before the Joint Committee on Public Service. They're at various stages of review. 4 of those bills were heard just this past Wednesday by the committee. Now, once again, the committee is chaired by State Senator Mike Brady from the city of Brockton and State Representative Dan Ryan from Charlestown here in Boston. Now, again, 4 association bills were heard this week. Nancy McGovern and I kind of split up duties on the bills. Nancy focused on the healthcare bills. I focused on some of the pension bills that were included. But just very quickly, of the 4 bills, the first bill was filed by State Representative Mike Day from Winchester, State Senator Paul Feeney from Foxborough. This proposal would prohibit cities and towns from increasing insurance contribution splits on existing retirees. So in other words, if you've retired, let's say at 75-25, Right now, the municipality that you retired from, they can legally change that contribution split all the way down to 50-50. And they could do so tomorrow, and legally we could not stop them from doing it. The only thing that's preventing them from making those kind of changes is the political process and just the whole fairness and justification of it. We believe it is extremely unfair to change contribution rates on existing retirees. It's one thing to say anyone retiring in the future is going to pay a different rate. And that's something that people can debate, people can plan for. We might not like it, because of course we don't want to see costs go up on retirees ever under any circumstances. But for future retirees, it's one thing. But for existing retirees who are living on a fixed income, retired believing that a certain set of benefits was going to stay in place for you, to suddenly have the rug pulled out from under you and everything changed and suddenly you're forced to pay more money for your benefits, that's extremely unfair. So this bill would prohibit that from happening. At the state level, we already have 3 different contribution levels that are based on the years in which someone retired. So that precedent exists at the state level as well, and we have to give credit to both the state legislature as well as multiple gubernatorial administrations for holding existing retirees harmless anytime contributions have been changed. It's always been prospective in nature, and again, we want to see the same thing take place at the local level. The second bill that was filed in terms of health care was filed by State Representative John Lawn from Watertown. Representative Lawn is also the chairman, the House chairman of the Joint Committee on Healthcare Finance. So a major focus of his work is the healthcare realm. So we were thrilled that he took on filing this bill for us and is working very closely with us to move it forward. But this particular bill is a new bill. It's an issue that we just recently became aware of late last year. And it's relative to, again, at the municipal level, the role of the private insurance consultants and brokers that are hired by cities and towns to help them with procurement or plan design, consulting on their healthcare benefits and plans. It seems that some of these insurance brokers are actually working as both simultaneously, serving as the consultant for the municipality while also serving as the broker for the municipality. We believe that this is an inherent conflict of interest, that you shouldn't be able to do both, that again, it's a conflict. There's also a significant lack of transparency into this process, lack of transparency in terms of fees being paid, how those fees are being paid, the amount of money that these fees actually are, who's paying the fee, whether it's coming out of your insurance premiums or being paid by taxpayers directly. This legislation seeks to clean all of that up, provide transparency, prohibit one entity from serving in both roles before the same municipality. We believe that you need to pick and choose. Are you going to be the broker or are you going to be the consultant? But you can't be both. So this bill was heard on Wednesday. We also had Senate 1917, which changes the definition of veteran. It was filed by State Senator John Velas from Westfield. Senator Velas has also filed the legislation increasing the veterans bonus, and we're very thankful for that. This bill kind of goes hand in hand with the veterans bonus as it changes or modernizes the definition of veteran in terms of Chapter 32, our retirement law, and how it would apply to the veterans bonus or eligibility for the veterans bonus. Now, back in 2004, the legislature changed the law in terms of the definition of veteran for retirement purposes, but that change was prospective in nature going forward for new retirees. Anyone who was already retired at that time has remained under the old definition of veteran, which was very restrictive in terms of who was considered a veteran for the purposes of the bonus and who is not. Under the old law, you had to have served in the military during specific dates. which for the most part included wartime service or during a time of conflict. But if you were someone who served in the military after those periods of time, or were not involved in any type of combat duties, you were not considered a veteran under the old law. This new law updates that. It treats all veterans the same, regardless of when you happen to have served. It also extends that definition to members of the National Guard who had served during active duty for a period of time. So again, it modernizes it and goes hand in hand with the veterans bonus. And finally, we have House 2854, filed by Representative Danielle Gregoire. This legislation enables spouses who are receiving a survivor's pension through the retirement systems to vote in retirement board elections. It doesn't allow a surviving spouse to run or be a candidate for an elected position on a retirement board. It simply grants them voting rights in those elections. The reason why we believe this is important is, first of all, it modernizes the system. It treats all pensioners the same, regardless of why or how you're getting the pension. But also, at the end of the day, surviving spouses depend heavily on the success of their local retirement systems and the state and teacher systems for the source of their primary source of retirement income. For most surviving spouses, that survivor's pension could in some cases be the only retirement income they're receiving, maybe in addition to a small Social Security benefit. So giving them the right to vote in these local elections is extremely important. We think it's the right thing to do. It also fits with the tradition of mass retirees being the voice for all public retirees and surviving spouses. As a matter of fact, back in the 1970s, one of the first major victories of our association, in addition to our early COLA victories, was winning the rights for local and state and teacher retirees to serve on retirement boards and vote in retirement board elections. There was a time prior to that when only active employees had the right to serve on a retirement board or vote in a retirement board election. We got that law changed nearly 50 years ago, or actually more than 50 years ago now, and it's time that we do the same thing for surviving spouses. Finally, there was a fifth bill that we lent our support to. It was filed by State Senator Mike Rush as well as State Senator Nick Collins on behalf of the State Police Association of Massachusetts, our friends at SPAM. This particular bill would increase the earnings limitation for accidental disability retirees. This is something both for accidental disability retirees as well as superannuation retirees. We believe that the earnings limitations must periodically be reviewed and increased over time to meet the demands of a modern society and meet the demands of inflation. The last time that these limits were increased was 12, 13, maybe even 14 years ago. And we all know how much the cost of living has gone up over that period of time. And just because you're on a disability pension or just because you're retired, as you all know, that doesn't mean that suddenly the costs of living go down or that the responsibilities that you may have as a parent, if you're on a disability pension at a young age, you still have the responsibilities to provide for your family. And this legislation helps to do that. It increases that earnings limit for disability retirees. Now, our hope was that the special commission that was authorized a year ago in the FY25 budget in terms of post-retirement work, our hope was that these issues would be reviewed through that process. But unfortunately, that process never got underway. So individual bills, such as the one filed by Senator Rush, are once again very important that these issues be reviewed and adjustments be made to earnings restrictions for both disability retirees as well as superannuation retirees to modernize the benefit. It's something that needs to continually be reviewed. Now, there's one more hearing coming up for public service next Wednesday. However, none of our bills at this time are being heard next week. I believe the focus of next week's hearings will be on divestment. Next week's weekly update, our plan is to once again shift our focus back to healthcare. There's a lot going on in healthcare, both in terms of the budget, the GIC, a meeting that we had just on Wednesday with the AFL-CIO, where Nancy and I presented along with our labor colleagues on a number of healthcare issues. So we're going to be reporting on all those issues to you in next Friday's message. But in the meantime, I hope you're all well. Thank you again for tuning in. Thank you for your support of our association. We'll be back to you again very soon. Bye-bye, everybody.